What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by comic creator David Barron. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Man, if you are not familiar with David Barron, then you are not reading comics, because David, you are working on, I feel like, everything. You have been a colorist for DC. You've been working on Batman. You did Batman Who Laughs. So many just different titles. Like, you list it for literally, I would have to list all your titles in the length of the amount of time this interview would go, because I feel like you have so many titles out there. So have you always been a fan of comics, or was this kind of something that you kind of got into later, or how did you get into comics?
So I've been working professionally since I was 15 years old. So as a sophomore in high school is when I actually started comics professionally with a company that was a sister company to Wildstorm Effects, or Wildstorm Productions, the Jim Lee company, for people who don't know, that was bought by DC Comics. So John Nee, who was at one point the vice president of Wildstorm, also had a company with his sister Claudine Nee, who operated in color. It was a coloring house, film house. Back in the day when we used to film books before they went to the printer, now it's all digital. So we did all that type of thing. I was 15 years old, just working away. When I turned 18, I went to Wildstorm Productions proper for Wildstorm Effects, and DC Comics bought us like a year to 2 years after that. And then I started working solely for DC exclusively for like 7 or 8 years. I then went to art direct the World of Warcraft TCG, Big Bang Party game, Walking Dead game, board game, all by Cryptozoic Entertainment. I was the art director there. Worked on other comics and writing. When I left Cryptozoic Entertainment, I started writing my creator-owned series, Stained. 5-issue sci-fi thriller, and then I started working with Valiant, and then back with DC, and now we're kind of here. So it's been a whirlwind, but I've always been into comics. You can say always. I started, my first comic was X-Force #1, polybagged. That's my real first one. I was in the 5th grade when that came out.
Okay.
And my friend took me to, it was a summer, maybe I was in the 6th grade actually, because it was the transition year.
Yeah.
And my friend took me to the comic store, my first comic store ever. And I said, oh, I'll grab that one. I have no idea what's in it. It comes with a card. It's polybagged. Looks good to me. Before that, all my comics were like G.I. Joe comics that you get in the grocery store. If I had any other comic, it was just randomly at the grocery store, never actually in a comic book. So my first comic book at a comic book store was X-Force #1, and I was pretty much hooked right away. I bought like 8 cards total, type of thing. X-Men #1 came out, bought every single cover of X-Men #1, and I just kept going through and just loving it. And I was drawing with my friends, and never thought I would actually ever color. Didn't even know that was a job. There's coloring in the books, but never really thought it was a job because you're young. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things I've been collecting all my life, and then pretty much working, in comics all my life. Starting at 15. I've definitely have been working in comics a lot longer than I've not been working in comics.
That's awesome. Well, you talk about starting at such an early age, and you have a lot of the work that I'm familiar with of yours has been from the colorist standpoint. How did you get into that aspect of comics? Because I feel like, as you're drawing or you're creating, like whether how do you get into like, well, I want to ink, or I want to be a colorist, or how does that kind of fall into that standpoint as a creator?
So for me, when I was young, I created my own books. So, I even sold them at San Diego Comic-Con when I was 15 years old. I had an Artist Alley table at San Diego Comic-Con as a 15-year-old. And now it seems ridiculous to hear that statement because how big San Diego is. Right. But me and my friend Nick, we would get a table together and we would create our comics. We'd stay up, all week, before the show to go to Kinko's and print them and bind them and staple them. I mean, all those different things, but we hand created our comics. And so I've always thought of myself as a creator more than anything else.
Right.
But when I showed my portfolios at San Diego Comic-Con, it was always as a penciler. It was nothing but, pencils. And because I was naive to the whole process of what makes a comic book.
Right.
So I showed my portfolios. They liked it. Eventually, when I was 15, I got a business card. And honestly, I got a business card out of luck, being persistent and really just being a decent person. Mm-hmm. And I lucked out, and this person gave me it was actually Jim Lee's mother-in-law that gave me a business card, and she wasn't supposed to. And she's like, here, just call these people, And so I called the number. I got a hold of someone. They could hear how young I was in my voice, but the number is not, given to anybody. So if you got the number, they think that you're supposed to have it. It's not just something that you easily find. And so I went straight to HR, and they're like, how old are you? And I said, I was 15. And they said, we have to be 18 to work here, but how'd you get this number again? And then I explained it, and I, told them my portfolio, and they're like, well, let me give you that. And that's how I got the number in color. Okay. So Wildstorm, even though I was showing my penciling portfolio, they never saw it at the studio to say one thing or another. They just sent me to a place where they know they would hire a 15-year-old. And when I went to that place, I showed my portfolio to Clydeen, and she really liked it. She liked my enthusiasm, and she liked the way I answered her questions and my eagerness to learn the process. And she goes, we color here. We don't draw, we don't write, we color. What do you think about that? And I said, awesome. And in my back of my head, I was thinking, I am the worst colorist out of all my friends. Like when we whip out the markers and stuff like that, I don't do that very well. But I'm not going to say no to an opportunity to work in comics.
Right.
and so that's how I became a colorist, is not saying no to a job offer and learning that craft so much where it's became a career, and people really know me for my colors across the world. And it's really nice. And they're starting to get to know me as an overall creator, which is great. And that is the ultimate goal, because even as a colorist, I've always thought of myself as a storyteller. Right. I never thought of myself as, okay, I'm just gonna put the color and I'm not really part of the story. I've always thought that every single person is part of the story. And that's why it's important to know the script, so you really know how to really expand and broaden the story. I remember when I first got into comics, it was hard to get the scripts. Yeah. Like they would not send you scripts for what's going on in the book. You just color. They don't care, about anything about it in terms of what they're actually trying to convey, which is why if you look at a lot of the old 90s coloring, besides Night and Day, there wasn't a lot of storytelling in the coloring, but part of it was because the colorists had no idea what the story was.
That's crazy. The inside scoop scoop right there. Well, that transitions very well into why I wanted to talk with you today, because you kind of made the statement of, you always were a creator. You started going to San Diego Comic-Con as a comic creator, creating your, self-published titles. And you have a Kickstarter that is launching today. It's live now as we're doing this. So as soon as this interview's over, go support this Kickstarter. Don't do it before. There'll be time. Like, just watch this interview first and then go support it. But you have a Kickstarter coming out for a book called The Cobblestone Chronicles. So let's talk about that a little bit then.
Let's do it. So this is such a great project. It's a lot of fun. First I need to shout out my partner on this book, Elisa Wiki. She is the artist. She's uber talented. She's so amazing at what she does. She brings so much joy and excitement to this book. So I want to make sure that everyone gets to, really appreciate the art. So she does the art, the black and white art. I do the coloring, I do the lettering, I do the design, and I wrote the book. It was written during the pandemic. it was inspired by my son, who's also named Michael. So the full title of this series is the Cobblestone Chronicles, and then each series will have, or each book has another subtitle, and it's a planned series of multiple books. We have 3 already planned, 2 of them are already written. The second book's already in progress right now for art. So it's called Michael versus the Babysitters. And the way that came up was I was sitting, it was like November, early December, somewhere around there. And I was sitting at the dinner table with my family, and just us 3 during quarantine, lockdown, you know, seeing nobody. And we start talking about how my son misses babysitters. And because when my wife and I would go out for some type of date night, he would get a fun babysitter that would come. And it's not that he'd be watched by someone, it's that he would make someone play Legos, play Nerf wars, lightsaber battles, hide and seek, board games. It didn't matter. Whatever he wanted to do, they did. And he liked that control. He liked, and we used to, and my wife would joke around that you don't want a babysitter to, you know, you're not there. You want a babysitter to beat up, you know, you want a babysitter to, you know, harass with a lightsaber, because you know that they can't hit you back. Otherwise they might get in trouble. and so we joked and we said, yes, it's Michael versus the babysitters. And then also we started thinking, and I was sitting down with my wife, you know, that'd make a fun comic book. And I said, I started just saying stuff out loud, and my wife and my son, you started enjoying what I was saying. And I said, you know, Elisa would be the perfect artist for this. And I've always wanted, ever since I met her many years ago at Phoenix Comic-Con, I've always been in love with her art. And over dinner years ago, I said, hey, you know, would you be interested? I think it was after Stained, my other creator-owned, or right in that, you know, mess of me promoting that book. And I said, hey, would you ever be interested in working with me? And she said, oh, absolutely. And years later, you know, because I told her, I said, I have to find the perfect project for us though. Years later, you know, it snapped. I called her up. I said, hey, bear with me. I just had this idea. I think it's amazing. I think you'd be perfect for it. What do you think? Do you want to do it? She listened to it and instantly fell in love with it. And she had so many ideas of her own. I said, this is perfect. And her ideas were spot on to how I was imagining it. From, you know, a lot of our own childhood references and experiences to the experiences that my son, you know, shares with us both and has on his own. That's how it came alive. And it's just kind of snowballed into something really magical and amazing. And we're so proud of it. I can't tell you how proud we are of this book.
Yeah. Well, and rightfully so. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Elisa, because her artwork pairs so beautifully with the story here. And spoiler alert, gang, she's going to be on the show eventually here in a couple weeks. So tune in for that. We're going to get both sides of the story with this, because this is going to be a Kickstarter that I'm super excited about. I got to preview the first issue, and it was just a delight to read. It was a lot of fun because you can feel the characters, you know, just like what they're processing as kids. And you're like, I did that exact same thing as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, that's the magical part about the story, is that whether you are my son's age or younger, living, you know, the experiences, you still sympathize and relate to. Michael is also the character of the book. Michael's my son, but Michael's the character of the book. You relate to Michael and what he's going through, from waking up to, you know, doing chores to being a master detective and you know, sneaking around the house. You relate to him so much. And then if you're an adult, there's so much more detail to it. There's so much that Elisa and I put into the artwork. There's so much that we put into the stories. There's actually, like, not to spoil, but when you look into the artwork, what you're going to see on a reread is going to be very fulfilling, even in a younger reader book, a younger audience book. And because we are creators and we want something that speaks to everybody. We're not trying to, necessarily Scooby-Doo it where, everything has like, secret messages, and it's nothing like that. This is a wholesome, fun book. Laugh, we try to make a laugh per page. We try to make every page visually interesting. We try to make every page have some emotional connection of, an adult's childhood and experiences, and a sense of wonder and mystery of a younger reader's first experiences. And we think we really nailed it. We think we really pulled it off. We're so proud of this first book, Michael versus the Babysitters. Our second book, I don't want to necessarily give the title away yet. It is in the back of the book. We announced it right away because we're in production on that. So in the back of the book, you get to, read the next title, which is really cool. And we're really excited for that one. Like Elisa and I just can't wait to keep making these books. I mean, this is something that I can foresee her and I doing, for the rest of our lives once a year.
Yeah, well, it fits into you've created such a beautiful world that you can go through so many different stories there, but I could read that and be satisfied with that issue. Like it's a very contained story. But also I'm so gravitate so much towards Michael and some of the other characters that you've created in there that like, I want to know more about them. So you definitely could, like you said, you could write this forever, as the ideas. And I think it would be a great series because, man, I'm hooked already and I'm definitly not a child reading a kid's book, but it's an all ages book. And I think that's what you said was so brilliant is whether you're 8 years old or whether you're 36 years old, you're going to be able to read this and enjoy it and relate to it.
The funny part about it is people don't like when you're pitching the book to publishers, they don't like to hear all ages. They want to know exactly. So we have to call it a YA book, but you're right. It's really all ages. I mean, we really worked hard to make it hit on so many different levels. It wasn't, a whim. This has been very thought out. And every character in the book has backstory. So it's kind of like Star Wars, where every character in Star Wars, where they're just walking by, they created some type of story. We have the same thing for this book. So there's not a single throwaway character in the book. There's not a single throwaway line. Everything has some type of meaning, and everything has some either foreshadowing or a reference to possibly their past that fulfills the character and makes them whole. And that's where, kids as they grow with the book are going to appreciate it as they keep reading it, even though they get older. And then that is where adults right away, hopefully will pick up on it and love it. It's one of those things that, I have so many things in issue 1 that actually don't matter until issue 3 or book 3. I should say issue. That's me in my comics. On book 3. So there's the seeds. The seeds are planted in book 1 that involve book 3 already, and it's that well thought out of a process.
That's awesome. So if someone's they're listening to this interview, they decide they want to go check out the Kickstarter, do you have different like tiers or some rewards that people like if they're checking out the Kickstarter that they can, what are some of those if you do like that, or like, hey, this is a pretty cool one or something like that?
We have over 25 tiers. So it's a very robust campaign, where we want to offer a lot for everybody. We even have tiers that are specially designed for libraries and retailers, because we know that the lifeblood of the comic book industry is our stores and our libraries. We have tiers for schools. I've been talking to a couple different places that are trying to get it involved in schools. This book will also be available in multiple languages. The first language that's been translated to already is Spanish, where because I'm the letters, I'm lettering the Spanish version right now, but the script is translated, and now we are moving towards, you know, the production of it. So that actually is available in the Kickstarter as well. You could be on the cover of the book. You could be in the book if you really wanted to. There's a couple of vanity ones where we will replace one of our characters and we will put you in there instead. So you'll have speaking lines. You'll be a major part of the book and pal around with Michael as they go on this adventure.
That's awesome. It's always cool to just see what are some different tiers, because, you know, people gravitate towards different stuff. So how, I know Michael was kind of, you said, was an inspiration off of your son. How closely does this character kind of relate as you're writing it? Do you try to separate, like, I don't want it to be my son, but I want it to be my son, or how closely do you tie that into it?
Oh, he's my son. Like he's my son. Now, obviously, it's not a like for like, because it's a imaginary story, right, you know, of fiction where I want to entertain him, and I love my son, and he's very entertaining to me, but you know, his real life may not be very entertaining to others. He has some great, you know, there's some moments that not only is my son dead on in terms of reference photos, but there are moments that is everybody's son or everyone's daughter, you know. When you read it, you're like, yeah, that was me, you know, type of thing. Excuse me. And so there's all these great moments in the book. And early in the preview, it is in the preview on Kickstarter, where people see, when my son loves pancakes, I used to make him a ton of pancakes. He doesn't necessarily use syrup. So that's like the difference, because syrup is very comical. Right. And the way, you know, just watching Michael in the book put syrup on reminds me of me, you know. And so it's like, again, there's all these little things. So it's the pancakes are him, you know, but at the same token, the syrup is me. And maybe the expression is actually, you know, Elisa, you know, when she would put the syrup on. So that's why the characters are so relatable. We have one character named DJ. DJ is actually our next door neighbor. He's modeled after him, and DJ is one of these great kids. And when me and my son are playing soccer in the front yard or in the front street, all of a sudden we hear this, Michael, Michael. And we like look around, and he's in the window yelling at us from upstairs, you know, just to say hi, you know, because he's a couple years, you know, younger. It's that childlike exuberance that, you know, I tried to capture in this book. You know, I don't have DJ shouting, you know, to Michael in the window, but as you read it, there's definitely some of that energy in the book for that character. And so it's has a lot of love in it. It really does. Out of all my projects that I've ever worked on, they all have love in it, whether it's for DC Comics or Valiant or you know, the World of Warcraft trading card game. I always put me into my projects, but Stained, being my first creator-owned, was very special. The main character, Emma, was a lot like me and other people in my life, but very much like myself. This book is my family. You know, this book is not just me or my imagination of how I see myself, like Stained was. This book, Cobblestone Chronicles, is really about friends and families and neighbors and things like that. And that's why I think it's going to hit and relate to everybody. I think everyone, when they read it, is going to be like, yeah, that was a good read. I'm so happy. You know, bring me my toys, bring me my movie, you know, bring me my cartoon of it. You know, people are going to want to see more of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll use the term YA because we don't want to call it all ages, even though it is.
Yeah, I get it.
But like, I get excited, like, you know, because I don't necessarily always gravitate to those types of books. But as I was reading it, I was like, oh my goodness, this is something that I can sit down and I enjoyed it as a reader myself, but I can sit down and read it with my kid and get to experience comics in a way with my kids that I think is just a brilliant thing. And to tap into that market of how do you have something that can hit across the board, it's tough to do. And I think you nail it in that, because there's, you know, what what age are you trying to hit, and who's your audience. And I think you just do such a great job of making it such a relatable story that people are going to gravitate towards it through and through.
One of the things that we did is we sent it to many educators. The reviews that you will see currently on the Kickstarter, there's a section of reviews where you get to see it. It looks like word bubbles, and it's been reviewed by professionals in the comic book industry. No bigger than Frank Quitely, who I used to work with. Thor, I sent it to him, in Glasgow. It related to someone in Glasgow. It related to, teachers and students in Temecula, California, where I'm from. It relates everywhere. But the biggest thing that I really loved when I let someone read it, and they were reading it on my iPad as we're going, and most of the people only got to see the first 16 pages. But in that first 16 pages, every single person had a laugh out loud moment. And I would always, I walk away, I was like, here, read this, and then I'll, go do something. And then I just sit there and I just wait. And sure enough, boom, they're laughing out loud. And I knew that I did something right. And the great part was each person laughed at something different. Yeah. And it's because there's things that they relate to differently and emotionally. And so something that I found the most, enjoyable, someone else might find the most hilarious, and, vice versa, and things like that. So, and I've given this to men, women, children, and it's all been the same. And there's nothing better than a big, I have this friend from Hollywood. He did Ford and Ferrari and some other stuff, serious guy. He likes serious movies. And I gave it to him, and he's reading it, and he's just laughing out loud the whole time. I mean, it was just every page. He's just, oh, it's great. Oh, it's great. And I just thought, good. I'm glad he's having fun with the book, because ultimately this book is supposed to be fun. It's meant for you to enjoy not only comics, but reading and, the time you spend doing something for yourself.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, as we've been talking about, you got your start working on a lot of, IPs, right? Like with DC and all these, intellectual properties. What's the difference for you of working on something like that you do with DC, and then getting to do something that's creator owned, where it feels like you have more freedom? I'm assuming. What was that like? How was that shift, or was there a shift in your creative process at all with this?
The creative process is the same, because as I was saying before, since day one, I've always thought of myself as a creator, whether I had a different job on the book, whether you're a writer, artist, penciler, inker, colorist, letterer, designer, editor, which is a huge one, assistant editor. You're all a part of the book. Every role is very important. And it's very important. It doesn't mean that you can influence, someone else's job, but ultimately without each person, it's not the same. With creator-owned stuff, it's exactly the same, but you wear more hats. So, I am the writer, colorist, letterer, designer, and editor. But then I also have another editor for copy editing and story editing. Chris Irvin, he's part of the project. He helped talk the story through. So when I'm reading him the story, he's saying, that's good, but is that in that character's voice? Do you think maybe we can say it like this, like you did in this panel on this page? It's like, oh, good call. And that's what story editors do. And everyone should have one, and everyone usually does. They have someone to talk to. Quentin Tarantino, has, his editor that would always help him cut the movies. Everybody has somebody. And with creator owns, you just have far less of those people. We did have a publisher for a while before we did the Kickstarter. Ultimately, the publisher passed after a while of working. It happens. I'm not, it doesn't mean anything on the book. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that, it did not work out. And, some of the best properties have done that, Chew by John Layman was one of the super successful image books that was pitched at Vertigo. Vertigo passed, and I don't think John Layman cares at this point because of all the success that Chew has had and still has. So there's always some good things. So this could have been the best thing for Elisa and I, to bring it via Kickstarter, because we get so much more control over it. There's definitely things that we probably would have had to leave out if it was with the publisher that we got to keep in. Oh, nice. And then there's other things that they had really good suggestions, and we're not going to say no to really good suggestions. Right. I've learned a long time ago, and you and I were talking before the interview started for a little bit, and I just said, hey, you have a good idea or you good suggestion, I'm here to take it. I'm not going to be so prideful that I'm not going to help myself out with good ideas. You want to listen to people, because a lot of people have great ideas.
Yeah, always be learning, always growing, because I feel like the moment you stop listening and growing, you're like, well, all right, you become complacent. And man, that's great stuff. Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would be remiss without just asking. I kind of know you got some other stuff coming up because it's been announced, but I want to give you a chance to say, like, what are some other stuff? Because obviously we want people to check out this Kickstarter that has dropped today. You're going to love it. You're going to enjoy it. But what else can you talk about that you're working on, that you got coming up, that's out there in comics?
So you can go to davidbarron.co. So davidbarron.co. That has a list of my projects and my events where you can find me on, my conventions. Conventions are coming back. Very happy to say I already have 4 scheduled, and with more coming. That will also have a list of my projects. One of the projects besides Cobblestone Chronicles, that's a creator-owned, is Stained Volume 2 with DC artist Carl Mostert. He is amazing. Yeah, I've worked with him on a couple Batman projects, and we worked together. He has done amazing work. Stained Volume 2 #1 is already finished. I already lettered it. It's fantastic. We're in the coloring process right now. That project won't be actually fully announced with the release dates until we are on like issue 4 out of the 5. That's how I operate. We don't announce things until they're done. Stained Volume 1 was the same way. I had all 5 issues before that was done. So that one's coming up. You'll definitely get to see some cool art from that, some teaser art, and more to come. So that's one reason to follow that website and sign up for my newsletter. The big news from DC Comics that just announced this week was Swamp Thing Green Hell, which is the opposite of the Cobblestone Chronicles, but equally as awesome. I love to stretch, my artistic talents and work with different genres. I think it all has its place, but that book is written by living legend Jeff Lemire. Most people will know him from Sweet Tooth that just released on Netflix. If you have not seen Sweet Tooth, highly recommend it. If you have not read Sweet Tooth, I highly recommend it. You get a totally different experience between the show and the book. The amazingly talented Doug Monke is the artist for the book. Him and I have worked together more than any other creator duo in both of our careers. And we probably could be up there as one of the longest run of creator and artist. And I know Alex Sinclair and Jim Lee with Scott Williams, they're pretty high up there because they've done a lot. But I think Doug and I probably could give them a run for our money because we've been working together for, 25 years almost. Wow. So we started with JLA and some other stuff back in, way before New 52. And then we did Justice League just recently, and a bunch of other books. But him and I by far have done the most work together out of any other combo. So yeah, Swamp Thing, Green Hell, wonderful horror book done by DC Black Label. Again, we talk about that whole team. Chris Conroy is the editor, very valuable. We have, the whole team is valuable, from the designer to the letterer. Everything about this book is high end, highly recommend it. And then on top of that, you mentioned before my past DC stuff. So I did Batman, the Black Mirror with Jock and Scott Snyder. And then we just kind of teamed back up again just recently with the Batman Who Laughs, with Jock and Scott Snyder writing and art. And it's just one of those rides. So if you really enjoy all my work, those are some highlights not to miss.
Yeah. And gang, the website that David just mentioned is going to be in the description of this video or in the description of the podcast, however whether it's viewing this or listening to it. But check it out along with the Kickstarter. And David, thank you so much for just taking some time. When we had the opportunity to just set this interview up, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've read so much of your work, and I was just thrilled to get to sit down and talk with you just what it is about creating comics. And good golly, gang, Cobblestone Chronicles is something you want to check out. I'm telling you what, it is a blast from start to finish. So
I appreciate it. I appreciate helping us promote the Kickstarter and the book in general. I hope everyone hops aboard. I can't stress enough how the first 24 hours is key. If you like what you see, please back us as soon as possible. Obviously, we'll take whatever we can get, but we're really excited about it. As you can tell, we're nervous. We just launched, so it's going to be a very exciting month, but definitely exciting 48 hours for us. Probably sleepless as well.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk to Elisa and have her share a little bit about the other side of the process with this, and have that conversation. David, thank you so much again. And anytime you want to talk about Cobblestone Chronicles or anything else you're working on, hit me up. You always have a home here on this channel. Love a great time having a conversation with you. So I'd love to have you on anytime you want. So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, gang, go now. The video is done. Go click the link in this video. Support Cobblestone. Like David said, the first 48 hours, you guys know, if you've watched any of my interviews, are so important for Kickstarters. Go back it, go support it. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.